I think people have to network more, just, get out of their comfort zone. From my experience, the best way to get an opportunity is through human relationship.
Welcome to Breaking Barriers of Black Investors, where we explore the inspiring stories of successful Black investment professionals and share the strategies for breaking down barriers in the asset management industry. I hope you enjoy and subscribe. For today's show, we have Alain Monkam, the VP of Fixed Income Portfolio Manager at Arvest Bank and the president of Arkansas CFA Society. Alan, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me, Michelle.
Hey, it's excited to have you here. I'm super excited that you took the time and you wanted to go ahead and share your story. I think it's going to be phenomenal for those who are listening. We had another guest prior to you that actually came from not in the same region, but I don't want to go ahead and give too much of a spoiler alert, but from a different country. So to get a different perspective, I think that's going to be great for the audience.
Thanks for having me, Michelle.
Great, great. So 4 months ago, right, I have to admit, I wasn't too happy by the post, but 4 months ago, you posted a poster of Joel Embiid as the most valuable player in the NBA. Now, I think it's up for debate. I'm a basketball fan.
Yeah.
But towards the end of your post, you ended the sentence with dream big. Knowing that you and Joel are from the same hometown of Cameroon, walk me through your journey of when that dream began.
Yeah, definitely Embiid is, one of the biggest ambassador we have coming out of Cameroon, being the MVP of the biggest basketball league in in the world. That's an honor for kids who grew up in Yaoundé, Cameroon, like me, right? So yeah, my journey started in Cameroon about 40 years ago. Born and raised in Yaoundé, went to school in Yaoundé. Cameroon education system kind of follow the French systems, where in high school you have to kind of pick the type of subject you want to focus on. And in high school, I was more into math and physics. Most people doing that kind of end up in engineering, but I went to college to study economics. My dad worked for the central bank back home. Anyway, he's retired now, but he used to work for the central bank. And growing up, I used to have conversation with him about, monetary policy, the economy, and stuff like that. So, it was kind of a natural move for me to go study economics after high school, even though, everybody thought I was gonna end up in engineering. So I went to University of Yaoundé too. That's the university in Yaoundé, where you can study law or economics. Got my bachelor and master's in economics, and after that, the journey continued in the U.S. So that's really the part in Cameroon. Yeah.
Let's take the party back a little bit, right? Because so your father worked in the central bank of your hometown. And in most dinner table, we talk about, hey, what did you do at the day? Did you meet a new friend? I don't know, but it sounds like your dinner table was talking about money.
Uh,
Or maybe perhaps you could provide me a little bit more color in terms of how was your dinner table like with a father working at a central bank and having money conversation all around you?
well, it probably started when I was maybe 12 or 13, because while he was working, he was also following some trainings. He was following some training with the university in France, like some banking school. So just watching him at home studying and always reading books, and I was just curious, and I was asking questions about what he was working on. And also, I used to spend a lot of time at his office, maybe after he picked me up from school, like he was trying to finish up work, and I was always around him, working or reading, and I was asking questions. Before I got to high school, I had a pretty good understanding of, what banks do, what's the role of the central bank, the economy, and stuff like that. So really, when I got to college, It was really a natural move for me to study economics. And within economics, I actually specialize in banking. So that was really like a full circle in college.
I'm not gonna say do you think, but it seems like your father was your influential figure in your life in terms of the path that you ultimately end up choosing and where you are right now.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. Yeah, there's no doubt. Definitely, he was that driver. Definitely, there's no doubt.
Your father was, the finance banking guy. And so I already know you have this analytical approach, very broad, money driven in terms of seeing how everything comes in full circle. Now, I'm curious to see what the other part of their personality came from. Like, how was your mother like?
Well, I mean, my mother, she used to work on an admin assistant at the Department of Defense back home. She was definitely not, the analytical person at home, but she was kind of like the calming person, always calm and that calming personality. I think I probably got both from them, right? Because on one side I can be very number driven, but on the other side too, I can be very calm.
So then, you decided that you wanted to go ahead go to school and you study economics, banking, and I think some part of it had to do with currency,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
believe.
yeah. I mean, yeah, yeah, that's the option in college. It's, banking, currency, yeah. And yeah, that was the option.
But also interesting, I saw that you played basketball.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I played basketball back home. Started when I was in high school. I mean, obviously back home, sport is not, it doesn't work the way it worked in the US where you can easily do both, right? School and sport. Back home, they don't really go together. Most people have to choose. But, I started in high school and in college, I played for my university. We have back home what we call university games, where once a year, every university in Cameroon meet for a tournament, and we call it university games. So I was playing, basketball for my university.
So why they don't go together? Is it because of conflict of time?
Well, it's not organized. It's not organized. For example, you're in high school, like you can play for your high school team, play tournament around the school. Back home, most team you're gonna play for, they have nothing to do with your high school. So it's out of school. The scheduling usually don't work. There are conflicts. So that's why, there is really no organization between sport and education. And I think, it's the same way in Europe. I mean, United States is really a unique system when it comes to sport and education, and that's why most guys playing basketball in Europe, they go pro pretty early. Like you see guys starting playing pro at 15 years old, 16 years old, because they stopped going to school. Compared to here in the US, you can play at a high level in college and still go to school.
So not to fast forward anything, but obviously there was two pathways that could have been taken, right? One was to focus on the basketball side, and the other is to focus on school, right? Now, looking at the path that you chose, obviously you decided to choose the school side, even though they had some blend with the basketball, and seeing the opportunity that exists in the basketball side. Do you ever look back and think, what if, right? What if I would have chose the basketball? Could I have been the next Embiid?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I look back, but I never, I don't have any regret. And by the way, my dad, he didn't want me to play basketball. Like my dad, again, the system was not built to go to school and play sports. So back home, like at the time, most parents, they thought that kids playing sport are, they didn't have any future in education. So, for example, my dad has never been to one of my games because he was not really pushing me, towards sport. So, it's something I was just doing on the side, on my own time. And I really pushed further in college because in college, I was living on campus, I was doing my own thing. But in high school, it was a little bit more difficult, still living at home and play basketball. So I have no regret. I have no regret. I mean, I did what I did. But definitely sport also taught me a lot. a lot of mental toughness that I use today. So I don't have any regret.
So, but how did that make you feel? Like, not really getting that support. I mean, your father, one of your biggest influential figure in your life, but in the sports side, you didn't really get that much support. Like, how did that make you feel, knowing that that was a game that you truly, genuinely enjoyed?
Well, I knew he was looking for my best interest. I didn't, and honestly, back then we didn't have the NBA of the world. That's the other thing. I think the NBA with NBA Africa kind of opened up later on. Where you started seeing guys going in the U.S. A little early and going to college. I mean, I remember one of the first Cameroonian player who kind of went big in the US, like in college. Joe Tuomo, he played for Georgetown while I was in college back home. And for us, it was like almost unbelievable. Like, man, you have a guy from Cameroon playing for Georgetown, playing for, a famous coach and all that. So we didn't even think about someone going to the NBA. So it was really something we didn't even think about. But today we have three Cameroonian playing the NBA. You got Joel Embiid, you got Siakam. So yeah, back then definitely I think we had less opportunity, and I think today probably parents think differently back home.
And besides, I think even choosing the path to go pro, it's a gamble,
Oh yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's it's
It's
it's you know
it's
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 it's highly competitive
yeah.
too, super competitive.
That's why the U.S. has a pretty unique system where you can go to school while playing sport. I mean, that's pretty good.
Okay, so you did your undergrad and you did a master back home, and then you did a pre MBA in the state, right? Following, and you finish out with your MBA at University of Arkansas. My question to you was, what was that transitional experience for you like, going to a university back home, then transitioning to one in the U.S.?
Well, it was very brutal. First of all, there was the language barrier. I mean, like my first language is French, right? So, I mean, Cameroon is a bilingual country. Like we speak French and English, but honestly, most people speak one language, either French or English. French was my first language. I went to school, using French. I went to college using French, and I remember taking some English classes courses at the British Council, a few months before I come to the US, some basic, classes and 3 months later I was in the US where I was supposed to start grad school. I mean, we talk about grad school and I remember my first class. It was business law. And honestly, I mean, I was lost. I was totally lost in that class. Took a lot of work for me to get used to the language and the system, and I mean, it took a lot of work. But honestly, it was pretty quick to get used to it. Because coming from Cameroon, I mean, I think we have such a difficult education system that we get used to things pretty quickly.
Alan, I have to tell you, trust me, business law, it was not an issue on your part. I would struggle with business law today. All right. So if if somebody tell me to take a class right now on business law, I promise you I would struggle with
Yeah.
it. So
But I think,
I don't care
I mean,
what
my
language you
first
speak.
semester I did okay. I think I had like a 3.5 GPA or something like that. But it just took more time for me to study, like, with the language. But I think, at the second semester, I was already pretty versed.
And the thing about it, like, you have people out there who's making that transition and go to the university school system, and and they were born within the country, right? They were born within the
Yep.
country, and then they don't realize the advantage that they already have, where you came from another country. Now granted, in your country, Cameroon, the discipline, it's a lot more tougher, right? You have a
Oh, yeah, yeah,
very
yeah.
disciplined principle approach. So compared to the US, it's very lax, right? I mean, hey, I get to it when I get to
Yeah.
it. But ultimately, you came to a country, learned this system, right, and then ultimately got to where you are now, right? So, congrats. I mean, that's big.
Well, many do that. You know,
That's real
it's
big.
the U.S. is an immigrant country. I mean, you got people coming from all over the world, and and they make it. I think that's the beauty about the U.S. I mean, it's if you can work hard and you can achieve anything, really.
The interesting thing about it is that you started university in the US within a time frame where there was an economic turmoil, right? The credit crisis. So it wasn't an easy time for you to have some level of surety in terms of, hey, am I going to have a job after graduating?
Yeah.
Right? So even I know that you were in the research department at the university. Like, I mean, how did you position yourself to at least enter the work field after graduating?
No, it was tough. It was tough. Like I worked as a grad assistant in college. While working on my MBA. So that that was mostly to help me pay for my tuition. So that was a great opportunity for me. But after graduation, I mean, I finished right around the financial crisis. That was 2008, 2009, and it was tough. It was tough, and also I didn't have much experience, right? I mean, because the only experience I had was working for the economics department, at my university. That was it. I didn't have any like specific, internship or anything like that. Because, as an international student, it was hard to get those. I mean, it was definitely hard. I think I just got lucky. It was through connection, and I was offered to come work for a group. They were really starting. It was a group of former executive in town, and they had sold the business they used to run to Verizon. It was a wireless company called Altel Wireless, and they sold it to Verizon in 2009. So after that, they were all former, investment banker. And after that, they just decided to start an investment firm pretty much to invest, their own money, And just through connection, I was lucky enough to end up with that group, to start my career. I mean, it was really luck. I mean, I can't tell you, like, I went through an interview process and did great or anything. I mean, I was deserving, I graduated with high honors and all that, but I don't think, that was enough, right? I mean, we know how that works. Someone has to give you the opportunity to show what you have, and in that case, someone gave me the opportunity. And till today, I mean, I'm still grateful to this group. I mean, Scott Ford, his dad, Joe Ford, and Rick Massey. I mean, to this day, I mean, I wouldn't be where I am today if it was not for that group giving me the opportunity to really learn. I mean, because you have no experience. You go in there, work with, like these are former executive. They have achieved everything in their life, and really, they are hiring you to learn. That's the way I looked at it. It was really a learning process. I'm still grateful till this day.
I mean, I always say this: luck is when preparation means opportunity. Now, the thing is, you said that you got lucky, but for those who are not as lucky, how do one go about creating their own opportunity or creating their own luck to get into the industry, the investment industry?
I think you have to network. I think more often people focus on the credential, the degree, the certification, and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's all human relationship. And sometimes it's not about going to a high golf club or anything complex. I mean, sometimes, you can network with people at a soccer field. You can network with people, you'll be surprised. You can shoot email to somebody or send a message and they'll reply, and start asking questions, not even asking for a favor, just asking question, and they will answer you. They will I think people have to network more, just, get out of their comfort zone. That's, I mean, from my experience, the best way to get an opportunity is through human relationship. Obviously, you have to be prepared. The degree and all the certification, I mean, it's if you work hard, you can get that. But I think what makes the difference is really the human relationship.
Real quick, we hope you're enjoying the episode and your support would mean the world to us. If you find value in breaking barriers of Black investors, we kindly ask you to take a moment to rate and leave a review on your preferred podcast platform. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but also encourage others to join our empowering community. Thank you. Makes sense. I mean, so when you see the whole, COVID pandemic that just occurred within the last 3 years, right, or maybe started touching 4 years now, it seems like a lot of people have lost the touch or the connection of networking. And maybe perhaps, the pandemic has a big thing to do with that, because even for myself, I give you an idea. The pandemic it restrained me from going to a lot of places, right? Or refrained me from going to a lot of places. But also it was during the time when I was studying for the CFA. And I realized that the moment that I went to my first social gathering, I forgot how to network.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know what you were doing.
I was working.
I
was working, and I was working from the office. I didn't work from home. So yeah, I mean, I think especially work from home, right? I mean, I can't even imagine starting your career remotely. I mean, that's a terrible setting, because how do you learn? How do I mean, you can be on video and Zoom and do all that, but I mean, really learning it's hands-on, I mean, it's because honestly, the way I was learning more around the lunch table at my first job, just the stories, just people around you talking about their experience. You're not going to get that from Zoom. You're not going to get that from email. You're not going to just being able to jump, into somebody's office and say, "Hey, how do you do this? Like, what do you think about this? How do you?" I mean, you can't really replicate that. And that's why all the investment bank, are pushing for people to come back to the office because, it's a big synergy.
It's definitely a disadvantage for those who's starting very early, right? Who's like entry
Yeah,
level. Because it's funny because I just came from a CFA event. So I'm based in Jacksonville. I just came from a CFA event, and I was talking to actually the president there, and she mentioned to me, and I asked her, what are your perspective in terms of, hybrid versus, going office and remote. She said, look, I think it really depends on the work and the
yeah,
level of position, where you are in the level of position. And she explained, she said, in the financial industry, we need to have that connection and togetherness, and especially when you're early on into that career path, you need to have that guidance. You need to have somebody that's right there to mentor you, because it's a lot of learning. It's a huge learning curve. But if you are part of a more established team, then yeah, you can have some more
yeah.
flexibility into that. But I do like, look, I agree with you. I think that working from home for those who's just getting into the industry, specifically investment industry,
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
definitely
it's
a
hard. It's hard. And
disadvantage.
they are not gonna grow, as fast as someone who is working from the office. That's just the reality, That's just the reality.
So you got your opportunity, work as your first job. Like, what were some of the things that you learned, and what was your takeaway once that opportunity was over, that allowed you to progress to the next one?
Well, I mean, first of all, when I started my first job, I realized that I didn't know anything, I mean, because, I mean, you get an MBA in finance and you start a new job. It was mostly, buy side equity, we were pretty much analyzing stock and making investment. I mean, obviously, in school, we talked about few investment principle. We talked about the DCF cash flow and stuff like that. But like the real world is different. It's just different. I remember like just first week, one of my boss said, "Hey, go go get me some public filing from this company. 10K, 10Qs. I want the last 3 years. I mean, this is not something like you spend time doing in school. Like, where do you find company public filing? This is not. There's not a course in class showing you stuff like that. So it was really, I mean, the learning curve was really just going through. I mean, I was spending a lot of time reading 10K, 10Qs, company presentation, filing, building models. So it was just a lot of learning, and I realized I didn't know much. I mean, it was just, but I had the base to learn. But that was what was very important. I had the base to learn, to build on. I already had the base, but I realized I didn't know much. I mean, that's the first thing. And secondly, I started picking. I was so lucky because I was working with guys with such a great experience. So like you have guys who worked as investor, but also as executive of a big public company. So I mean, they had both sides, not only the investment, but also have the operating side. And it's really, sometimes it's hard to think as an executive. Like most people, like, if you're not being if you've not been executive, it's hard to think like that. Sometimes like a company will make a decision and you will say, man, why would they do that? But I was with people who used to make those decisions. So they will show me things that, I wouldn't even think about. It was just such a great learning. I mean, like I'm so grateful, I mean, to have worked with these people. It was a great learning. And also, even out of the investment world, like they understood how things work, even from, the political standpoint, from the connection standpoint. I mean, it was just, pretty much how to connect the dot between, like the business world, the political world. It was just, it was a great learning.
That's amazing. So, and then you ultimately decided to leave, right, and to progress your career.
Well,
Well, I don't know what
honestly,
happened
I didn't
between.
leave,
Mhm.
So it was an investment boutique, and we did a lot of things there. It was not only equity. We did private placement, we did equity, we did some real estate deal. And within that group, obviously during the financial crisis, you had a lot of banks in trouble. So within that group, we started thinking about investing in a failed bank.
Bank.
Yeah, yeah, in a failed bank or a bank, that was in trouble because they thought, like that, and they had done it in the past. They had done it in the 90s around the SNL crisis. So it was really the second time they were trying to do something like that. And sure enough, we raised money and we did a bank, recapitalization. It was a bank, the bank was in trouble. So we recapitalized the bank. It was a 50 million recap. And that's really when I started working on banks. So from one thing to the other, I really started working on banks. Once we did that bank recap, we were like, okay, well, it was a probably like an 800 million asset bank when we did that deal. We said, okay, we need to grow this bank, you know. Then we started looking for acquisition target. We worked on it for a year, found a target, did a merger. Then I started working on bank merger. I mean, it was so hard to approve the first deal because it was a smaller bank buying a bigger bank. The smaller bank was in trouble. You remember back then, they had tarps, they had, so it was very, I mean, it took us more than a year to approve the deal. But once we closed the deal, one of the partner and myself moved to the bank. So it was so the bank was our portfolio company. So we moved to the bank to be more hands-on. So that's kind of our transition from that group to the bank. But it was really still working for a portfolio company. And within, that move, my job was really to keep looking for other acquisition target. So it was mostly bank merger and acquisition, but also I started focusing on the bank investment portfolio. So suddenly I also switched from stock to bond. So so it was I had I spent 4 or 5 years analyzing stock, equity, and then I switched to bank M&A and fixed income. So I did that, and within that job, I mean, we did one more bank acquisition. Also, I started really going deep into bank, portfolio management, mostly fixed income. That was a big learning too. Like I had to start learning from scratch, and that's when I started my CFA study. I was like, man, I need to learn more about this thing, So that's really when I started studying for the CFA charter, and I finished, while I was working for that bank, and uh, and then that bank got acquired by a bigger bank, and that bigger bank is the one I work for now. So I never left,
So you
I
never
never
left.
left. So
That's for those that don't know the differences in complexity between equities and fixed income.
yeah,
Please elaborate on that because I think that some people may look at fixed income, may look at the valuations like, oh, okay, it's simple enough. The discounted cash flow is pretty
yeah.
simple. But the different intricacy between the fixed income and managing the liability side of a bank, please provide some colors between the differences between complexity because I think
Yeah,
we need
yeah.
more colors
Yeah,
on that.
stock, stock is ownership, right? I mean, when you buy a stock, you buy ownership in a business, in a public company. Fixed income or commonly debt, called debt, I mean, that's just a borrowing, right? So there you buy a borrowing from a business. So, it's two different thinking, two different mindset right there. And the thing with bond is that interest rate is one of the biggest driver. I mean, when you invest in stock, I mean, you have to worry about, company free cash flows and projection and things like that, whether it's top down, bottom down approach, and but with bond, you have to worry about one, is this business is going to make the payment, the coupon payment, because it's a debt, right? It's a debt. I mean, they call it fixed income, but you also have floating debt. First, are they going to make the payment, and then what's going to happen to interest rate, right? Because if interest rate goes up, bond price goes down. If interest rate goes down, bond price goes up. So it's just a different mindset, But ultimately, I mean, if you understand how to read company financial, you can put the two together.
You obviously got some additional skill set from the CFA. Not everybody's CFA journey was the same, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, you were working, and that ultimately led you to become the president of the CFA Society of Arkansas. Now, let's take a step back on that journey, that CFA journey of yours. Like, how was that like managing the studying and working? And I'm assuming you probably was starting a family. I don't know, but
yeah, yeah. It was
around
yeah,
that
it was
time.
crazy. So first of all, I heard about the CFA charter for the first time while I was working on my MBA. Three of my professor had the CFA charter, and honestly, I mean, before I talked to one of them, I knew nothing about the CFA charter. I mean, but one of the class we took in MBA, because I did the finance option, was the advanced investment class, and within that class, we used the level one CFA material for equity and for fixed income. So that was really my first contact with the CFA charter. While I was working on my MBA, we were using the level one equity and fixed income of the CFA exam. But, after my MBA, I started working. I didn't really think about the exam. I started thinking about the exam when I realized that I needed more knowledge. I worked for like 3, 4 years, and I realized that I needed something. And also while I was working, I had a lot of contact with some sell side research analysts. Like I was mainly focused on few industries, and I had contact with some research analysts. We're going on tour to talk to company management, and all of them had the CFA charter. All of them had the CFA charter. So I was like, I mean, there must be something about the CFA charter, like I think I need to try to get that. So I started studying. It was probably my third or fourth year, working. Obviously, I mean, you work, a full-time job. The only time you can use it's, either after work or on weekend. I mean, that was it, right? And that's what I did. Before I started taking the exam, I talked to one of the CFA charter I knew, and I was like, "Hey, I'm about to start this thing. What's your advice?" you know, and all I can remember is that he said, "You need a schedule, and you need to stick to it. If you don't stick to it, trust me, you're not gonna make it. You need a schedule, and you need to stick to it." I was like, "Okay, well, I mean, that's." And he also said, "Hey, I use, Schweizer, no promotion here, but that's, the Kaplan, stud CFA program." So I did that. I signed up for Kaplan, and within that, they had a schedule builder where you could build a schedule. They will build a schedule for you, and that's all I was doing. I was following the schedule. But honestly, I was studying after work because I was working full time. I was studying maybe from 6 p.m. to 9:30, 7 p.m. at night. I think I was taking one day off. That was Friday. I was not studying after work on Friday, and then I was going back to the office on weekend, Saturday, studying maybe 5 hours, same thing Sunday. So that's what I did for 3 years. That's what I, that's what I did for 3 years, and it was all about commitment, really, because I mean, I can vividly remember studying at the library on December 24th. I mean, like I can remember, like it's still vivid, like like people are out there with festivity and all that, and you're trying to
Hmm.
work on some derivatives valuation. So I can.
So Black
Yeah,
Shore.
yeah, I can vividly remember those moments. But again, it goes back to discipline and having a plan and actually stick to the plan. So that was my. It was hard, but now I look back, I just say, hey, that's what was needed, to make it.
And it's the crazy part about it is that unless you went through that journey, it's hard for others to truly understand.
No, I don't think they can't. They can't. They can't because the reality is there is no way you can cram the CFA exam. I mean, you can't. You have to take the time to understand the material. There is no there
Hmm.
is no quick fix where you're gonna take like 2, 3 weeks and try to mumble your way around. Like you can't do that. So you actually, I mean, you have 6 books. Like, and I mean, it's economics, statistics, financial analysis, derivatives, and it's everything. So you have, it's just too much material to take it lightly. If you want to pass anyway. I always tell people you either want to do this for 5 months on move on, or you want to do it for years. Just pick. I mean, because if you don't do it the right way, you're gonna come back next year. Like, just do it and move on with your life.
But you know what? The journey taught you a lot about yourself. Because I know when I did mine, my CFA charter, I mean, mine was a little bit different from yours because I finished both level while I was in grad
Yep.
school. and all I had to do was study. I kid you not, I never even opened a single book because I was studying the CFA. And that level of knowledge and in depth, it's pretty much a master degree on its own,
Oh yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Um, my prior guest in this podcast, I was telling him like, look, I read the 4,000 pages. I was like, man, I had to.
Hmm.
I didn't know that existed. Because I didn't want to have that gap.
Yeah.
But when I tell people the journey that one have to go through to get those three letter words, and I tell them, yo, it's difficult. Like they don't because difficulty is a qualifier word, right? It's like how
Oh
difficult
yeah,
because
yeah, yeah,
difficulty is
yeah.
different for everybody. They truly don't understand.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
They really don't
it's
understand.
a difficult exam, but it's worth it because the CFA charter will open up so many doors, and that's what I said earlier. Like, we talk about being lucky and all that, but you have to sometimes put the luck on your side. And like if you want to work in the investment management industry or anything related, I mean, taking the CFA charter will definitely put some luck on your side.
Now you like the president, right, of the CFA Society of Arkansas. Now, walk me through that journey of making your way up there because I'm gonna be honest with you. First of all, there's not too many black guys or black girls
No.
at that level, especially when they're even their whole entire investment industry. But to be in the board and ultimately the president, I mean, man, that's first of all, that's a big accomplishment. How did you get there?
Well, honestly, I mean, first of all, these are all volunteer position, right? It's that's very important. I mean, you have to be willing to give your time and energy, and you're just a volunteer serving the members. I was invited, when I became a charter, two of my former university professor were part of the board of the society. They were part of the board of the society, and at the annual dinner when they introduced the new charter, they asked me if I want to join the board. Again, someone giving me an opportunity. That's the same thing, like, my first job. Someone giving me an opportunity to say, hey, do you want to join the board? And I said, yes. I didn't think twice. I said, yeah, I mean, whatever you guys want me to do, I will serve, I will learn, and that's how the journey started. I mean, I've been on that board for 7 years. And I went through, several positions, treasurer, vice president, and now I've been the president for 3 years. I think this is my last year. So I'm about to, I'll stay on the board, but be the former president. But yeah, I mean, definitely, it's a really really, it's a volunteer position, but it's rewarding. It's rewarding because again, human relationship. That's what it goes back to. You connect with so many people. I mean, you're not getting paid to do that. Like it's all volunteer work. But as member of the board, the CFE Institute has what the SLC, the Society Leader Conference, that they put together. There is one for North America, and there is one globally. So once a year, they will bring some society leader somewhere around the world for a few days to learn about the CFA Institute, to see how we can better serve the member. And just being on that board, I mean, brought me all around. I mean, I've been to London for the SLC conference. I've been to Vancouver here in the US. I've been to Miami, Boston. And yeah, I mean, and when you go to those conferences, you network with so many people. I mean, just think about it. You got people coming from Europe, Latin America, Asia, Africa. I mean, it's for 3, 4 days, you guys meet, you guys have meetings, you guys talk about, what they do for their society, how you can serve your member, how you can grow. So, I mean, throughout that journey, I learned so much. I met so many people. And I remember like having a great relationship, almost personal relationship with the former, CEO of the CFA Institute, right? So it's just things like that, where it's all around human relationship.
I'll tell you what, I'm volunteering tomorrow.
But yeah, man, it's worth it.
I'm reaching out to them. Matter of fact,
It's
I'm gonna
worth
reach out
it.
to them
It's
tonight.
definitely worth it.
No, that's good. I think one of the most important thing, at least for me right now, is how do you create impact? And I think like this CFA society, the vision and the mission is to serve the community. Of course, it meant to better the investment industry, but I'm talking about in terms like the focus is the members. How do we better serve the members? So those members to go out into the investment industry and create a bigger and sustainable and ethical impact and integrity. Right? I gotta say that part
Yeah.
too, which I think is big. But in addition, right, you get the opportunity to be able to meet some wonderful leaders within the industry, because keep in mind, like those people tend to be the top of the
Oh
crops.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you meaning the top of the top in one specific area. So you could imagine the reach
Yeah.
that you have just to connect, just connecting with those individuals. So that's awesome. So, but I have to ask you though, who do you have for this year in terms of basketball?
Uh,
Who's your team?
I mean, I'm a Lakers fan, so it's been a little rough, but we'll see. It's gonna boil down to health. Anthony Davis. You never know. How healthy he will be, but we'll see. I mean, I think it's wide open. I mean, LeBron
Okay.
probably still has 1 or 2 years, but yeah, it's tough. Especially the West. The West is getting pretty hard, but we'll
Oh
see.
yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's amazing what LeBron is doing at his age, and like you said, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'll be surprised if Anthony Davis give you 50 games.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, now with the new rule, I think they will start finding people missing games. I think they put it out this week.
I saw that.
So that'll be interesting. And also, you have to play so many games to qualify for the first NBA team or MVP. So I think that may, push some of these guys to start playing ball. So
I'm gonna be honest with you, I thought they made that rule right. Really, the focus of that rule was based on that the guy that played for
yeah,
Clippers.
Kawhi Leonard,
Um,
yeah.
Quite, yeah. He's fucking it up for
No,
everybody.
no, Kawhi Leonard, the guy, he's on resting mode. He's on resting mode, but yeah, I mean, I'm a Lakers fan, good or bad, I'm a Lakers fan. So
Oh, okay. So watching basketball, and I don't know if you still play. Like, what other things do you enjoy doing?
I mean, honestly, I don't have a lot of time, like I spend a lot of time, with my boys' sport activities, not surprisingly. I have two boys that play sport, and so I spend a lot of time, practicing with them. And matter of fact, we practiced before this podcast this evening, basketball, football. So yeah, I mean, and I also enjoy, staying active. I mean, working out whenever I can. But I know it sounds boring, right? I mean, I don't. I also spend time, listening to a lot of podcasts. All investment related most of the time, or I also, enjoy learning about people. Like, I enjoy biographies and things like that. One of my best podcasts, I made this, invite all these founders, people who founded all these great companies and, going back to their life and learning about how they did it and how they, I just enjoy learning about things like that.
What is it called? How we made this? Like, what is it called?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I made this. Yeah,
How I made
yeah.
this. I'm gonna listen to it because one of the things that is very fascinating to me is just listening to people's story. That was other part of the mission in terms of why I started this. You never know what somebody had to go through to get to where they are.
Learning from people's journey is powerful. Yeah, I just looked it up. I built this. Sorry, I built this. He mostly invite company founders. That's all he does. I mean, it's so interesting just to see how people started and the challenges they went through, and it's so interesting.
Learning opportunity for me.
Yeah,
Definitely gonna be a learning
yeah.
opportunity for
When you
me.
sent me the Calendly invite, when I was looking at it, I thought about the episode because he has the guy, the founder, Calendly founder, on that podcast. He's from Nigeria, and I listened to almost all the episodes. Yeah.
So you enjoy practicing with your boys, basketball and other sports, listening to some podcasts, learning. Obviously, I know you probably watch basketball. I think that must be a given. The way
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you
a
sound
lot,
so
yeah, a
passionate about
lot, a lot,
Lakers.
a lot, a lot. Yeah, yeah. NBA season, yeah, when it starts, yeah, that's.
I don't know if you and your wife travel, but like my wife loves to travel. I mean, do you have any like
I mean,
traveling?
honestly, traveling. I enjoy traveling, but I think these days there's no time. Like my son plays travel ball. I mean, he plays from February to August almost every weekend. Well, we travel for tournament, I guess. But yeah, definitely I enjoy traveling. But these days, I think there's just no time to travel. It is, like kids' activity is such a big commitment. And again, it goes back to, sacrifice, right? Like, yeah, I enjoy traveling definitely, but these days it's harder.
I want to ask you one final question. I'm sure that you already know what that question is going to be. Hopefully, you had some time to really think about it. When everything is all over, how do you want to be remembered as?
Well, I think, as someone who had a positive impact on people's life, I mean, whether it's family, friends, coworkers, strangers, I mean, just because, I mean, I think that so many people blessed me, right? To be where I am today. And I think that it's very important to be able to uplift other people whenever you can or however you can. Hopefully, someone just saying, "Hey, he impacted me," like positively. I mean that's really what matters. The human relationship. How do you help better someone's life? I think to me that's what really matters.
Well said, Alan. Well, thank you for taking the time to join us in this episode. It was a pleasure.
Well, thanks a lot, Michelle. That was fun. That was really fun. Thanks for the
That was fun.
opportunity, and good luck with the podcast. I think there's definitely a need for it. I'll make sure I put the word out there.
I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on Breaking Barriers of Black Investors. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast. Your feedback fuels our mission to empower and uplift our community. Help us spread the word by sharing our podcast. Thank you for listening.